Okay, just wondered.
It makes my heart happy, though.
Oh, can you read that?
Yes.
Oh, that was a Christmas gift from my wife.
Are we live?
Yes, we are live.
Whoa. Everyone, welcome to From the Ground Up podcast. So, as you guys know, you can get these shirts that I'm wearing right meow on Theportcitypythons.com. We do have some animals available. If you like ball pythons and want to make my life a lot easier, I have ball pythons for sale, and as well as corn snakes and the normal stuff. But also, we're going to have Amazon links in the description. All you do is click on the Amazon link, shop as you usually would, and the kickback goes to us, which is awesome. And it supports the podcast and it supports everything we do here. Or you say, hey, I listen to the podcast and I'm going to buy a ball python. And then you get a deal because I like you because you listen to the podcast. It's pretty neat. What else do we have to say?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm already lost my intention into the chat because Gustavo, our friend, is here right when it starts. And Dan and Brandon, our friend in California, is back. And the first thing Dan said is, hey, look, you have the guy on who has everything. And I thought it was funny because we were literally just talking about that.
Yeah.
So I already got sucked into the chat.
And Gustavo is currently trying to vouch for me, in quotations, for this trade that we're trying to do in Florida. So Gustavo's kind of my, I don't know, what would you call that? Liaison. So thank you for that live on the podcast, just so everyone knows my business. But
whatever, if he sells us snakes, I'm not trying to hide it.
That's what I'm saying. Is there the ball pythons? Kudos to whoever sells ball pythons, because I swear this has been
tough. What, 4 days?
I've been like selling ball pythons for like a week now, and it's the fucking worst. Ball pythons people treat like trading cards, and they'll ask you to fucking take their mother's dog in trade, their lawnmower, their fucking toothbrush. They don't give a shit. Anything that they can give away to get a pastel bumblebee head for whatever the fuck, they try. So sorry, and I love the ball pythons that we have and that we are selling, but damn, selling them is a pain in the ass. And if you are a ball python guy, I salute you for dealing with it. I don't know how you do it. Damn.
Maybe they're better at it than us.
Maybe there's a lot better. Yeah, maybe we need to
maybe like reputable breeders don't have to go through, like, you know.
And I'm thankful that corn snakes are different. And when someone goes to buy a corn snake from us, they're buying a corn snake from us because they feel like buying a corn snake. Not that they're worried about too much. They obviously are a little bit worried about the genetics, but they're not. That's not the sole purpose of them reaching out. So thank you to all of our awesome customers who don't try to, we've never traded anything for a corn snake. No one's even asked us, but they are very cheap. So I guess that kind of makes sense. Yeah. But that's my little rant, I guess, on the whole ball python thing. I should stop hating on the ball python so much.
We should introduce our guest. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So today we are having on Ryan Dumas of RAD Reptiles. So Ryan, give us a little intro on what you work with and kind of how you came about your reptile business or hobby.
What do I work with? A little bit. I mostly work with coastal carpet pythons, and my bigger project is working with tigers and xanthics and trying to get those together. But I've kind of been playing around with a lot of different species. Maybe about a year ago, I decided I needed to try out, kind of acquire some things, see what I really want to work with, and make that long-term collection plan and kind of stick to that. That's what I'm doing now. RAD Reptiles is just as simple as a lot of people. It's my initials. So that was easy. And it had some nice alliteration, so that worked as well. And I think I bred my first clutch in 2015. And, I've been breeding ever since then. It's not that long, but got a lot of cool stuff going on. And reptiles have been a part of my life for a long time. This is now my 12th or 13th year working in zoos and aquariums. So I just like working with reptiles a lot.
So what exactly do you do in the zoological field?
Go back further.
Oh,
Have you always wanted to work in the zoological field? That's a fancy way to say it.
No, I have a different story. I guess a lot of people that I think are on a lot of different podcasts, so they end up saying, I grew up catching frogs and snakes, and I always knew I wanted to. Like I mean, I caught frogs and snakes. I think a lot of little kids do, but I didn't. That's not what I wanted to do. My first year in college, I was a finance major. Yeah, I know, lame.
We weren't going to say it.
So boring. But, it wasn't until, weirdly enough, I was watching Road Trip. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but there's a Burmese python that like bites Tom Green, and it's a funny scene. He throws it around. He's like, screaming, and for some reason, it made me want to get a snake. So I got like the coolest starter snake ever. I got a ball python. And I loved it. And I was like, how do I get paid to just do this all the time? So, I was in school and thanks. My 6-year-old told me I was doing a good job. I guess they're watching me in there.
So we should definitely not curse. Then.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure you said the F word already 3 times.
Well, adult podcast. Where was I?
Sorry, that's my fault.
No.
So Tom Green Road Trip.
Oh yeah, right. So I said, how do you get paid to do this? So, I got an intern at the Cincinnati Zoo, and this will give you a little clue as to kind of my age. But in 2001, I was an intern at the Reptile House at the Cincinnati Zoo. A few years later, I graduated college, and then I started working at the Newport Aquarium, which is here in Cincinnati, and then I worked at a lot of different places. You need to volunteer and get your foot in the door and meet some people and get experience along with your degree to get into the field. But ever since I had that, I keep getting this from the. Ever since I got that ball python, ever since I started interning, I knew that I wanted to get paid to do this. Life's too short to have a crap job. At least that's how I've always thought about it. So I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else.
So did you end up changing your major, or do you just ride out the finance and then all they really wanted was a degree?
No. I definitely changed my major. I have a BS in biological sciences with a minor in physics.
Whoa.
No, it was always super cool, trippy stuff. It was mostly astronomy, which is always, that's a little easier to intake physics wise than, why that ball rose down the hill. But yeah, I honestly can't imagine doing anything else. I mean, I lived in Washington, D.C. for 4 years, New York City for a couple years, and then came back. So I worked at the National Aquarium and then at the Bronx Zoo for a while until I came back here.
So is that a field where you kind of have to chase the job because there's only so many, jobs available in the field?
It depends on what your goals are, for sure. I kind of chase the job to try to work with different animals. Like when your first job, sometimes, you got to think how many zoos and aquariums are there. Maybe, I think there's like 250 something AZA accredited zoos and aquariums. That's not a lot of herpetology jobs. So there's most likely not going to be anything available by your local zoo, by your local aquarium. So you kind of have to move and kind of get that experience until it brings you around to some place where you kind of find that where you really want to be. And that's where I'm at now. Like I'm at the Cincinnati Zoo, and that's where I want to be, so I don't plan on ever leaving the zoo.
Where is that like ranked? I don't know. On like
in his heart, number one.
Number one. The answer to that question. It's a phenomenal zoo. We have that hippo. I don't know if you're familiar with Fiona. The premature hippo that was born. Oh my gosh, there's so much of it around here. But it was a premature hippo that was born at like 20-something pounds. It was 2 months early, and they nursed it back to health, and it had like a 2% chance of living. It's adorable. Google some photos later. I know this is a reptile show, but
I don't know what a regular sized hippo baby would be. So
I think it's like 80 pounds.
Holy shit! Yeah,
yeah, they're big. They're big animals.
So
sweet team that got together and really like saved that thing, and it's brought a lot of attention to our zoo, which is good for everybody, really.
That's pretty crazy. So was your wife always cool with having to move around, or is she doing something similar like that? How did she kind of deal with you guys moving around all the time?
Well, she didn't. I just got married last year.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, she didn't have to put up with it. She's a Cincinnati native.
Oh, okay. She got lucky.
Yeah, I got lucky. I'm not an easy person to deal with, so found someone who could put up with me. She's the best. She's totally supportive in everything I do. She now works at the zoo. Actually, we both worked at the aquarium, and she went to the zoo. She's a water quality technician. She does a lot of really cool water quality testing that was never done there. So she's a lot smarter than me.
So something that probably should have been done there before, but wasn't.
A lot of, there's still, it should have been for sure, but they're still way ahead of the game in a lot of zoos and aquariums. I think you'd be surprised. So there's still a lot of improvements that need to be made across the board, but they are stepping those up. We're way ahead of the game.
So what's different as far as, obviously you keep in your private collection. So what's kind of the difference at the zoo? I mean, is there red tape and stuff that you need to go through when keeping? Are there things that are necessary, unnecessary? Like, what's the difference between private keeping and then keeping at the zoo?
I think you nailed it right there with the red tape. Like, if I want to do something at home, I just have to make sure I clear it with one person. At the zoo, it's a whole nother level of, there's maybe 6 levels of things that you have to get through in order for something to happen. And that could be for acquiring a new animal, or that could be for approving a new diet. If I want to try quail chicks on an animal, I just order some quail chicks and feed them to the snakes. But you have to, most zoos, our zoo included, has a nutritionist that kind of evaluates the diet and makes sure that it's not something that's going to harm the animal in any way, or that it meets the nutritional requirements, and then it'll get approved. And so it can be pretty tricky, and that's just diets. And like one of the bigger things we work with is different types of browsing leaves for tortoises. So we harvest a lot of our own browse, so mulberry trees and hackberry and different types that tortoises eat, because most of them aren't supposed to have like a very high calorie diet. Like, they're not supposed to have a lot of groceries. So we work with her to kind of approve all these different things.
And she does it for every animal's diet at the whole zoo?
She certainly tries.
Holy crap, that's a lot.
Yeah. We try to help. In our department, we definitely try to help by doing the legwork for her. And, it helps us too, because it always happens a little faster. If I do the research and provide journal articles and information from other zoos that are using something, it's going to get done a little quicker.
Right. Like, you wouldn't expect her to stay updated on the foremost knowledge of flamingo diets, along with, skink diet. Like, that's just way too much.
Like, there's so many different turtles and tortoises. Like, how could you? It's very difficult for one person to focus on just that, let alone all the reptiles and then the amphibians and then everything in the zoo. So it's definitely a high stress job, I would imagine. But
yeah, it's literally nearly impossible.
But it's just another level, that you have to go through to get things done. But I mean, we have a pretty well-oiled machine, and we run pretty well, and we enjoy it. I mean, there's not much better jobs out there, in my opinion. I think it's the best job.
So are there things that you wish you could keep at home, or what's kind of at work that you love keeping that you wouldn't necessarily keep at home?
Oh, crocodilians, by far. By far. I'll never keep one here. Venomous, I think venomous is cool, but I'll never keep it at home. I mean, number one, I have a 6-year-old and one on the way, and I just won't have that in the house. Not that I'm opposed to it. Personally, I just don't want to. But working with crocs is one of the coolest things. I'll never be able to keep, a 20-year-old American crocodile at home. Just not unless I get lucky and win some lottery money or something. But those, some of the bigger tortoises we work with, a really cool group of Galapagos tortoises, and just having the space for them to roam around, it's pretty neat.
Yeah. So is there any, what kind of species are you working with as far as the crocs go?
Right now we work with American alligators, American crocodiles, and Chinese alligators.
That's awesome. So do you do a varied diet with them? Like, what would you typically feed them, and are you in charge of keeping those particular animals?
Those particular animals, actually, I am responsible for, and we do a lot of training with those. It's good enrichment, and it helps us shift them. So if we need to move a large crocodilian, it's always better if we can encourage it to do it itself, instead of us having to, drag it somewhere. But I mean, you kind of we'll offer anything we can find in the freezer, you know, whether it's rabbits, guinea pigs, rats, mice, chicks, quail, smelt, herring, you know, whatever we can kind of find. A lot of times we even use she's a 28-year-old American alligator, and we'll give her adult mice. It's real small, but it's part of the training, you know, because you don't get a lot of repetition when you're training with reptiles because they don't eat that much. I mean, and we fast them for 3 months out of the year as part of their natural, you know, cycle. Even though we're not trying to breed them, it's just better for them. They sync up pretty well with the weather. So
you pretty much brumate them in the winter? Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
I think we try to do that with as many species as possible because we're in the temperate climate here. Makes it difficult, and those are in a different building, but even in the reptile house at the Cincinnati Zoo, it's the oldest zoo building in the country. It was opened in 1874.
Shit.
So there are some hiccups with working in such an old building, such as, you know, it's not super well insulated necessarily. So it works well with brumating them because sometimes we couldn't keep the temperature up that high all the time.
Yeah. So what temperature are you trying to reach? Because obviously we know with colubrids, we're trying to be around 50 degrees. With the alligators, are you trying to get to somewhere between that same mark?
No, we just kind of go with what the weather does for us. I mean, the bigger crocodilians are kept in a big greenhouse. So we kind of just let the natural kind of weather. There's HVAC. There's an HVAC system in there that, you know, we can keep it at roughly at most temperatures. But it's a lot better because you never know if there's a power outage. If you just fed that, even if you're keeping them at 80 all year, you just fed that animal and there's a power outage. I mean, you want them to be able to metabolize that food. And even if there's a slight possibility that they wouldn't metabolize that food because the temperature dropped overnight, I don't want to even entertain that possibility. So it makes sense from a longevity standpoint. I think, I don't know the paper, but I also just personally believe that brumating animals, it increases their lifespan. I think it's a very natural part of their life cycle that needs to occur. But no, we don't typically we don't look for any specific temperatures. We kind of just go with what the environment will give us. Sometimes it doesn't need a whole lot if we're trying to actually breed something. Sometimes you don't even need very much temperature drop, like a specific one. You might only need 5 or 10 degrees.
Mm-hmm. So are there any animals that you do have captive breeding programs for?
Sorry, I wasn't prepared to talk so much about work, but
we can move on. I'm just following my curiosity. You know?
No. This is part of what happens when there's no script. I'm like, you ask me a question, I'll go, hold on.
Yeah, I didn't know zoos do breeding.
Of course.
Got a keeper who's doing pretty well with some dart frogs. We got a lot of that going on. I think we definitely want to breed our king cobras this year. We have some lace monitors at work. It would be really cool to get something moving with them. But right now we are more or less going through our collection plan, very similar to my own personal collection. Trying to see where we're going in the future. And it's not as easy as at home. At home, you just try to say, like, what would be really cool to work with? What fits my space? And you're kind of looking at what's available and what you can handle. Whereas in a zoo, there's taxon advisory groups for every specific. There's an amphibian taxon advisory group, Colonian, croc, snake, it's for everything. And they develop these regional collection plans that you're supposed to use to help develop that collection plan. And so you have to use that as well as what you think is cool so that you're kind of helping out,
helping the system,
but also bringing some cool stuff in that's going to get you motivated too. So it's just, we're going through that kind of scenario right now. So our collection plan's a little in flux.
That's something that I see happening in, say, not very communities within the private sector, but something in Boland's, say cooperation between private keepers in order to kind of figure out how to breed these animals. How can we take that mentality, or is it too much to take that mentality into the private sector?
I think there are 3 strong suits in herpetology that all need to work together in order to reach a lot of we all have most of us have the same goals, to conserve a lot of the herpetoculture. But we need academia, we need the private hobby, and we definitely need AZA institutions to work well together. Easier said than done. I think a lot of private keepers are better at keeping certain species than a lot of zoo keepers, but the scenarios are different. When you have a Boelen's python at home, you have complete control over what you do with that. If you're a zookeeper 1 and you're managing an entry-level zookeeper and you're managing a Boelen's python, you don't typically have a terribly large amount of freedom to kind of do what you want. And also, a lot of times you're tasked with making that animal visible. At home, I'm not worried about making them visible. I want them to be happy and healthy and, feel secure. But sometimes it's tough to find that balance when people need to see them, and you're really not going to have a big impact on somebody if they see an empty Boelen's python tank. But if they see one, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that is awesome."
And I mean, I could imagine that's what you figure is a big thing, is dealing with the stress level, kind of not interacting with the animal too much, not having them feel vulnerable and stuff like that when you're talking things like Boelen's pythons or scrub pythons or things that generally kind of freak out when you go near them. But
yeah. And all those things too, we're required to provide enrichment levels for all these different animals as well. And, I think it's important, and enrichment can be something very, very easy. It could be something like stirring up the substrate. When snakes are on it for a while, sometimes they mat it down. That's enrichment. You're encouraging them to sniff around and redig and do that kind of stuff. But those are things that we need to do and are documented. We provide UV light for almost every animal we have. So it's a whole different animal. But at some point, I think there are some zoos working with private individuals currently, and I think it works out well most of the time. I think there's a Turtle Survival Alliance works with the private sector, and they work really well with people who are, legitimate. You just have to be very, very cautious. There's a lot of liability. Very, very few people are ever going to be loaned crocodiles or venomous snakes. It'll always be something small and relatively harmless.
And I'm never going to be the person who's like, yeah, everyone in the public sector, because there should definitely be a barrier to entry, knowing.
Yeah, it'll be a select few private hobbyists if it ever catches on, for sure. It's a tricky situation that'll take a long time to develop, but I think it's a good relationship to have, for sure, to have that in your back pocket, because zoos run out of space too.
Yeah. And I was wondering what you felt about the kind of relationship between, things that we've had come up more so now than have in the past, is things like UV, things like keeping in tubs, things like what cage size, all stuff like that.
The amount of lighting.
So what do you think is necessary or unnecessary, or, what do you do at home that you wouldn't do at the zoo, vice versa?
Well, I mean, I have a lot more resources at work than I do at home. As one probably knows, zookeeping is not where you go to make money. So at the zoo, you'll have a lot more resources. And I think if at home, if you had the ability to give every animal UV, to give every animal that enrichment, wouldn't you? If you had that opportunity, if you had the money, you had the time to do it, I think most people would. So at the zoo, I have those opportunities, and I make the best of it, and I try to provide every animal with enrichment opportunities, with UV lighting of some kind. You're just trying to provide choices. At home, do I think it's necessary? I'm not sure yet. I think the jury's still out. Do I think it hurts? No. So I don't see why not. I would love to have UV on everything, but personally, I like to put as many adult animals in cages as I can, just because I like to look at them. I like to see them, and I don't know if that's better for the animal or for me, but they seem to be all right with it. I have nothing wrong with tubs, personally.
Yeah, I think there's an obvious argument in which someone would say, hey, then maybe you shouldn't have 100 snakes. Maybe just have 3 and provide all those things for them. So it's hard, and we wrestle with this. We obviously have numbers of snakes, right? Yeah. And yeah, I could have just the olive python, and I could make this whole damn room crazy bioactive enclosure. Like, what is necessary, what is not? I wish I could have all 3-foot enclosures for my corn snakes or something like that, but I don't see that happening. So should I keep 100 corn snakes, or should I keep 3? I don't know.
As long as they are outwardly healthy, You know, I don't see the problem with it. Honestly, I just don't. And everyone's entitled to their opinion. You're allowed to think that someone's allowed to think that you shouldn't be keeping animals in tubs. And someone's also allowed to say, you know, well, I think having something in a decked out bioactive aquarium is for you, not them. You know, that I don't really care, you know, what other people think. I try to keep my animals healthy. Occasionally I try to enrich them at home. I try to enrich them. I offer them different food sources. I take them outside sometimes. I think they look best outside. That's a perfect place for photos. I think it's to each their own. You know, I stay pretty quiet on those things on Facebook because, I mean, nothing good usually comes out of having a strong debate unless it's an obvious answer.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like continuing education classes for zoo workers?
In what capacity? What do you mean?
I don't know. Like, as a teacher, I have to do a certain amount of hours just to stay up to date. Right. Just to stay certified,
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know, every 5 years, an entire zoological facility is up for accreditation through the AZA, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And that's a big accreditation because it opens a lot of doors for you. And they really do, at this point in time, them and the ZAA have the highest require the highest level of care. And they make you prove it. And then they come in and make sure you're doing it. So you're always trying to stay up to date there. So, you know, I've gone to an AZA crocodilian training course where they teach me a ton of stuff down in St. Augustine. I've been to AZA amphibian courses, management courses, conservation courses. There's a lot of great stuff. I'm going to a population management course this fall so that I can create a new stud book for a species we recently collected called the Pascagoula map turtle. We went and collected an assurance colony of those in Mississippi this year. They have some pretty dwindling populations. So those are just a few of the classes, you know, and then
yeah, that's awesome.
They have some of those. They're not free, but I don't pay for them, so that's good.
So they're not required. You're doing it on your own, or they are required?
They're not required, but they're highly encouraged. And, you know, any new keeper, I would encourage them to look through and ask if it's in the facility's budget to go to those types of things, because not only are you learning things, but you're connecting with a lot of other people who are learning, but a lot of people who are teaching as well. And you're networking with people who have been keeping crocs a long time or keeping amphibians along, whatever it may be. And there's a lot of knowledge to gain from that.
Yeah, definitely.
And do you get the opportunity to do field work?
I definitely. I mean, I was just down in Mississippi in May.
So you went to collect those turtles?
I did, and I went through the whole process of working with the Taxon Advisory Group. So it's a candidate species. So there's only 4 in captivity. So we had to go get some more to make an assurance colony, and then, you know, we look at the long-term viability. How many do we need to make sure that we have a sustainable genetic variability, a variance moving forward? So what we look for is 90% genetic diversity over 100 years, and we needed at least 20. So we collected as many as we needed for the assurance colony, and most of them young, so that we didn't affect the reproductive population. But we went down there. I applied for the permits. I was helped at work to get those permits. I worked with an awesome guy named Dr. Will Selman at Millsaps College, who's like the king of map turtles and one of the kings. There's a few, and it was very successful and very cool. It was my first real foray into the field to do that kind of stuff, and so I think there will be more opportunities available.
That's awesome. So out of those 20, does that then you guys kind of distribute those to other zoos in order to make some type of breeding plan between all you guys?
Yep. You know, I've got some are going to go out to like a San Diego zoo, some to hopefully Sedgwick County Zoo, things like that. But part of going to these population management classes, it'll help me publish a stud book, but then it'll also give me the resources I need when it's time, because it's going to be a while before their breeding age, to create a breeding and transfer plan. So I'll look at the genetics everywhere and make recommendations. Hopefully I'll be selected as the coordinator for that, and make recommendations on where these animals should go to give us the genetically best offspring.
This might be a dumb question.
For a lot of different species.
This might be a dumb question, but what's a stud book?
It's basically just a collection of the animals in a given population, and they're all assigned a number, and all the information is there and where they have. So a stud book is basically just an inventory.
Okay.
Of a species.
Is this like other turtle species as far as the reason why they're having trouble surviving is because the long, I guess, life cycle, and it takes say a spotted turtle, maybe it takes 10 to 20 years to breed, and it's hard to get to sexual maturity. Is that kind of the same deal with these map turtles?
Somewhat. The biggest problem with these the Graptemes gibbonsi, the Pascagoula map turtles, is that they're megacephalic, so they have huge heads. So that means they specialize in a lot of like hard-bodied prey, like different bivalves and crustaceans and things like that. And there's a lot of clear-cut logging in that area, which increases the siltation, which affects that prey item. And since that's their primary prey, that's like one of the first things to be affected by pollution and siltation. So there's a lot of siltation there, and we've seen their numbers drop over the last 20 years pretty substantially. So it's basically prey availability, and will they adapt quick enough to hang on? And we got out in front of it. So now we have that assurance colony, and someone will always be able to see them. And they're cute little turtles.
Awesome. Are they just in Mississippi?
Yes.
Okay,
they're only found in the Pascagoula River drainage.
There you go. Mississippi has something to be proud of.
They got a lot of cool stuff down there. I'm thinking of wildlife and stuff.
Okay.
Right. Wildlife. Same as Louisiana. There's a lot of species in Louisiana.
Yeah, there's a lot of more stuff other than reptiles.
There's one city and Louisiana pine snakes.
You're not allowed to shit on Louisiana in this podcast.
Oh, sorry.
Or ever. We are better. We are better than Mississippi and Alabama. That's
there you go. We
got a sports team.
There you go.
No, we're 48.
48, whatever. How many states are there?
49, Alabama's 50. Okay. We're 48.
No, Mississippi's
not last.
Yeah, exactly.
That is what we are always proud of growing up, is that we are not last.
Yeah, I think Kentucky growing up was like 47th, so don't.
That's true.
Good old South.
Whatever.
But as far as, there's not many things that, honestly, in reality, a captive keeper in the private sector can do for conservation. If there is anything, like what do you think a person, a regular human being like me or her, could do for conservation as a whole? We don't work at a zoo. We don't have any ties to a zoo. What can we do as reptile keepers?
I think your very first step should be to reach out to your local herp society and see what's going on there. A lot of times they have something established, and a lot of times people think conservation and they think, oh, I'm going to go out and like mark turtles and catch frogs, and a lot of it's just like clearing a damn field of honeysuckle so that the habitat can be restored and be reused for like Massasauga rattlesnakes, and a little goes a long way. So I think volunteering out of that stuff is a great. If you can, there's also Howard Redding, that's a guy who's involved in a ton of cool conservation. Jeff Frederick.
We bought his shirt.
Never heard of him.
I do. I have. Buying T-shirts. That seems like the easy way out, right? $15 for a T-shirt. That's what this is. It's the Desert Tortoise Council, and that money goes to help them do the work that they do, which I'm not super clear on it. I just really like the T-shirt. I should probably look more into that. But I met some of the people at the last Turtle Survival Alliance conference meeting, and they were very energetic people, and I had no problem giving them $15 for a T-shirt. But I think reaching out to your herp society is really important. There's a whole mess of people that are going to be in your herp society potentially, from real old keepers who just like doing that, to maybe your state herpetologist you might meet there, to a lot of young kids that you can give positive feedback on reptiles and stuff, and kind of make sure that they're going in the right direction with things. And then usually, if you got a good president of those herp societies, they're setting those types of things up. So, have you ever heard of the Neurodeo?
No.
Nope.
I know, isn't it the best name ever? So
that's a genus of water snake, by the way.
Oh, I was about to say, it sounds like something that is passed between.
I think it's every year. There's I forget the who does the study, but they work with Lake Erie water snakes, and they need to catch as many as they can. So they have a neurodeo, and you go up and you catch them, and you help them scan the pit tags and record all the information. If it doesn't have one, then you let them know, they pit tag it, and that's an easy one if you want to get really lit up.
Yeah, they just want people to get bit and shit on constantly.
Yeah. Hey, that's a cool way to do some conservation.
Yeah. No.
That would be my first step, is to do that kind of stuff. You know, any of the fundraisers at the zoo, do kind of those kind of things if you want. But I think your Herp Society is probably your best bet for, as a civilian, to get involved.
I think that's something that maybe we don't do a great job at, is the fact that those kinds of things are kind of barely hanging on at this point. And I personally have never really been involved in that form or fashion.
We've talked to them at NARBC.
We've talked to them, but yeah, it's always...
And it's always a really cool talk. Like, whenever we talk to them, they know so much, and it's cool. But we don't really go much.
It's something that we need to do better on, actually following up. And if there's someone knows someone in Pennsylvania, I'd be glad to.
Yeah, we haven't even reached out to the Pennsylvania.
I know that there's a good one in Kentucky, I believe, and which is somewhat near here. But.
Yeah, but look at you guys. You know, you provide a lot of information to the hobby. I mean, you'd have a lot to offer to a local herp society, and even younger kids that are getting excited about stuff. You know, we see a lot of 10 to 15-year-olds at the herp society here, and those are like the people that you want to connect with and just share. But it's also tough on a hobbyist level as well, if you know, because it's not like reptiles take up some time. So. And then you probably have some other hobbies, so it's hard to fit it all in. For me, I can't get enough. So I go to work, I work with reptiles, I get home, and I take care of my collection. And then, you know, I'm at the Herp Society meeting as well. And I just can't get enough.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, we do that, but we do it in like different, just through the internet, as far as videos, as far as
talking to
podcasts
people.
And stuff like that, or shows is a big thing, obviously.
A lot of time, though.
Yeah.
You guys put in a lot of time. You can tell.
Well, I appreciate that. At least you can tell. So let's talk about, I guess we can switch to
your collection. Since
finally
we talked about the zoo for 40 minutes.
So I want to hit probably black rats first, because obviously that's something that you have breeding age and you produce. So when did you get into black rats? Kind of how'd you get into that project? And speak a little bit about the special blue-eyed A-male that you have.
That's a good segue, and you'll see why in a second. Because back when I was an intern at the Cincinnati Zoo Reptile House, again, since this will be probably one of the last times to talk about the zoo, it's in my opinion the best reptile house and the best Cincinnati and the best zoo.
Number one.
There was a keeper there. Yeah, number one. There was a keeper there who had brought in some black rat snakes from Glades Herp, if you remember that name at all. They were normals. They bred them to make food for king cobras and stuff, and a couple of albinos popped out. This was like in the mid to late 90s. So, you know, keeper at the time, he's not there anymore. He's retired. He took a pair of the albinos home, and I was given a pair. And when I finished my internship that he bred, and when I moved, I had to get rid of them. And when I moved to DC and stuff, upon coming back, you know, I met one of the volunteers that was at the zoo, and she had some of those animals, and she asked if I'd be interested in taking some of those on. She had no interest in necessarily breeding them. She was just keeping them, and she had quite a few building up. And I was like, well, of course, because I'd love to have those animals back. And so she gave me a male and a female, and the female was your typical A-male looking black rat snake, but the male is very odd looking, and he's a very dark albino. He's got a lot of red to him. He's incredibly different, and maybe on my Facebook page you can see the differences in those two. But he's very dark, and then he has blue eyes. And the thing of it is they're brother and sister from different clutches, but from the same grandparents and the same parents. So whatever's in there is, I'm thinking he might just be something very unique. And it's not a proven trait, but all the babies that I've hatched out 2 years in a row now have been normal looking A-males, but I mean, they glow, man. They definitely have a look to them. So last year I didn't hold any back like an absolute idiot. So
I'm about to say, yeah. Have you bred them back?
Yeah, no. I kept 6 this year, so I'm not gonna make the same mistake twice. But it's just such a cool line, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So I have to breed number one. I have to breed the babies back to themselves, but also I need to get a nice big regular Eastern rat so that I can just see if he breeds with her, what comes out. So I didn't think it through very much, but now that I have more time, and when you say it out loud, it sounds like really dumb. Like, oh man, I probably added years to this project, but
yeah, just a couple. But
yeah, whatever. I'm not in it for money or whatever. I'm interested to see what happens, and they're cool snakes.
Mm-hmm. And so I mean, if people don't know, I mean, males, you shouldn't have any blue eye. I mean, you should have pink eye, red eye all the time. So, I mean, that doesn't seem like anything that we see as possible in any other snakes. I don't know any other snakes that would come out male while still having, some type of color in the eyes or anything like that. It's something that you see obviously in leucistics and stuff like that. So, I mean, is it possible that it's just some crazy happenstance, or
it could be a crazy weird individual, just a unique specimen in his own right, or who knows? There could be something, but it'll be interesting to find out breeding the offspring back to each other. But also, again, I need to acquire a big female and see what happens there. So who knows? But they're available. I have a few available, but I don't charge a ton of money for those things because it's not a proven trait. It could be, so maybe it'll work out for somebody down the line. But I'm not trying to make $1 million here, so because you can't.
And it's black rats, so yeah, I mean, me and you care maybe.
Can't make.
I love black Ratsnakes, man. They're just some of my favorites.
Yeah,
I always stare at Iman, that guy from Germany that has like a really awesome lines of different mutations for black rats. I always look at his stuff damn, that's good looking stuff, man.
The most messed up things is that even in corn snakes, Europe tends to have the best looking colubrids because they seem to have they care a little bit more than us, I feel.
Some people. I think that's a pretty broad generalization. I've seen some absolutely remarkable corn snakes here. I've got a pair of Sherman line Okeetees that I thought were going to set the tub on fire. I mean, those things are just, whew, So I don't know. Maybe I'm not as into it with it, but yeah, I mean, the bigger people, sure, but I think there's more people here working with them, and we get around. How many breeders of corn snakes do you know of in Europe?
And I can think of here. True. I can only think of 2 that have some really amazing.
Yeah, but I look at the Colubrid classifieds. I'm like, oh, I love that. Let's check it out. And it's always available at ham every single time. I'm like, what the hell?
Well, you notice the stuff that's rarer. That's not here, I would think. But I'm not saying they're not doing a great job over there. But, give ourselves some of our own love here.
Well, I think that Morelia is something that we have kind of the same issue with, as far as not an issue, but it's kind of cool because I feel like people have really gone hard on things like Balin with the Reds and stuff like that haven't been touched as much in Australia because they have a little bit more to work with.
Oh, absolutely. Morelia is just it's like the coolest python and one of the more infuriating pythons at sometimes. I like having locality stuff if possible, and there's just no such thing. You can have locality types and you have a pretty good background, but no one can give you collecting information and background lineage on most carpet pythons back to I'm sure there's a few people, and I don't mean to generalize, but even the most well lineaged snakes, you can't go back and see when the hell they were imported from Australia. You just can't. So, and then there's always, the genetics behind it, the purist versus the non-pure. I mean, I tend to keep mine more pure coastal wise, but that's because I really only work with coastals, and I don't have a problem with whatever anyone wants to do either. If you want to mix stuff up and make some cool looking shit, do it. It's just I don't want to do it. At least someone's doing it. But yeah, Morelia, I mean, carpet pythons are what got me into it, and the coastal exanthic, once I saw one in person, I was like, need that. Definitely need that. And it was my first big purchase. And at the time, I was we were all pretty sure that it was a recessive gene, and that's a whole different debate. So that's why I made the investment. I loved it, and it was recessive. I thought it would hold its value longer, and it'd be a nice long project for me to work on. And it still is a nice long project for me to work on. Like, I can't wait to see xanthic tigers, xanthic tiger jags. I mean, they're going to look stellar, you know, but I'm just rambling now. Save me, guys.
As a purist, where do you get a pure jag?
A pure jag?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I feel like that's been bred in and out of everything for the last 15 years.
Yeah. I mean, again, yeah. Is it pure? Like, where was the jag originated? Yeah, I think we know the story behind it. Just miraculously popped up somewhere, but
well, they all trace back to a miraculous event that happened somewhere in Europe.
Yeah, there's a mysterious portal in Europe where things just pop up. But overall, I mean, I think they're just such a hardy species of python. I think they have an awesome looking, almost like prehistoric head, you know, and the scalation on it is amazing. And there's so many flavors to work with. I just think they're awesome. It's hard not to get all of them.
How many clutches have you produced, and when did you start producing carpets?
Like 2015 is when I produced carpets, and I think I'm not very a well-seasoned breeder by any means. I think I've had 4 or 5 clutches of carpets. 3 have been xanthics, coastal to a homozygous xanthic to a non-xanthic. And I've had 3 clutches out of those particular pairings, and then I did a jungle jag to a coastal jungle cross. It was my first clutch. So I always wanted to do jungle jags, and then I wanted to. The percentage thing was killing me. I was like, these are 62.5% jungle jags and crosses, and make sure you'd let everyone know that. And I'm just like, these are coastal.
It's very crazy.
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a purist because I'm not against it. I just happen to only want to work with coastal xanthics and tigers.
And now, to beat the dead horse, when you did the homozygous xanthic to the regular coastal, did the heads look xanthic or halfway there?
Varying degrees. There are some that look like they are absolute xanthics, like homozygous xanthics. And there are some that look like they may not be. And I mean, just by that definition alone, I think it fits more into the incomplete dominant category. I think there needs to be a lot more work done to sufficiently call it, but I think it's pretty obvious at this point. And I've talked with some other big breeders, some who disagree and some who completely agree. And, you know, all of them have been very, very respectful, and I've been respectful back. So that's one of the cool things about a lot of the people in the Morelia community is that you're allowed to disagree and then not hate each other and go all off on each other. You're just allowed to have a difference of opinion. In my particular scenario, I mean, my eyes don't lie, I don't think. So, I mean, it's really obvious. If you produce, if you use a homozygous xanthic to a normal, you're going to, my thoughts are you're going to see plenty of homozygous looking animals. You'll see some variation of hypoxanthism in all of those babies. And as they shed, they just get more and more hypoxanthic looking. I was just cleaning before I got up here on some of the clutch on the clutch from this year, and I was like, I mean, this thing looks. You could sell it as an xanthic, as a homozygous animal. So I don't know.
And then how do you? I guess the question is, how do you end up marking that animal for sale?
Personally, I mean, I make sure that the pairing is known. I think that's one of the more important things that a lot of Morelia people do is they make sure that you know what was put into that, so you know the history of the parents. And you know, I see them as the same type of gene as the caramel gene in carpets. There's caramel and super caramel. Do I like those names? Not really, but it's the way it kind of is. And so I kind of refer to any animals as xanthics and super xanthics, but in parentheses I always put homozygous or heterozygous in there, so there's no mixing. Shouldn't be any confusion at that point. There might be a little, but you'll know if there's one copy of the gene or 2 copies of the gene.
Now,
I don't think anyone is following suit, but I don't really care. I'm honestly not trying to like do some kind of marketing thing, but to be congruent with other incomplete dominant like, it's not like anyone says this is a het caramel or het zebra, you know. So
but you're doing your due diligence so that the buyer knows what they're getting, and that's all that really matters, isn't it?
That's absolutely number one. Yeah, that's the one thing I hope people who've done business with me understand, that I'm very, very upfront, very, very clear. If I have a jag, I express every little bit of potential neurological problems that it may have. If they're not aware, I'll make sure they know. If one's exhibiting a little bit, I let them know, or I don't sell it. Everybody knows what they're getting if they purchase something from me. I really stake a lot of reputation on being very honest and truthful.
Absolutely. So now, since we can move on after the xanthic stuff, inlands, Brisbanes, Darwins, do you work with locality stuff as well?
Nope, just coastals.
Okay.
I honestly don't have a lot of carpet pythons. I have 3 species of Morelia, but just coastal carpets.
Mm. And then as far as, what was I going to say? Damn it. Morelia, and did you hop into liasis? I saw that obviously you got Macklots and stuff like that. Kind of where'd you go from carpets?
I just started really liking a lot of different things, and I wanted to see what I would like to work with, because in my brain, working in zoos for long enough, you realize that having a collection plan is solid. Otherwise, I feel like if you don't have some sort of collection plan, you're just gonna just keep buying cool shit as you see it, and without any real thought. And it's different when you take some time and put some actual thought into see either things you want to produce or things you want to work with. And I'd love to be able to produce anthill pythons every other year and be able to have some of those. And so I've got a pair of those, and those aren't going anywhere. Those are awesome little snakes. So I put some thought into it, and I couldn't make up my mind because a lot of the species that I think I wanted to work with, I'd never really worked with. So I just made the decision to acquire a lot of different things and see what I really wanted to work with until I've had them for 6 months or so, and I'm really getting to get into them and see what they're like. And if I don't like, even if I do like them, sometimes I know I'm not going to have the space. Like, I'm realizing now with a kid on the way that my space and time are limited. My snake room is not big. I mean, it's maybe 8 by 6. It's not a very big room at all. And even though I really love Macklots pythons, looking down the line, I can't see any way I can fit 3 badass liasis pythons into that room, unfortunately. So
that's half your room off the bat.
I'm not going to beat around the bush, and I'll start making room now. But I've pretty much streamlined what I want to get out of my collection, and I'm pretty close to solidifying it.
So what are you thinking of besides maybe size as far as what you want to work with? And is there any shame in kind of trying things out?
There's never a shame in trying things out. I think that you just need to put in the forethought before you just impulse buys happen. It's not always a bad thing, but I think if you plan it out and say, these are the species I'd like to work with, and then when you see some available with some good, good stock, good background, good seller, reputable breeder, and you go for it. And if you don't like it, I mean, why do you have to keep it? That's so silly. I'm not worried about what other people
order and can't.
Are you talking to me?
Sell things that are pointless.
Well, no, I just like everything that I have, though. That's
because you're a snake hoarder.
Exactly.
Because it's not supposed to take over the whole house.
What?
We don't have kids. He said
he has kids. You got the time. If there's ever a time in your lives you could stock up on shit and be hoarders, it's literally right now. Because it doesn't get any easier.
Yeah, but I'm not allowed to be a hoarder for other shit. But he's a snake hoarder.
Don't you like it too, though?
No.
Oh, I thought you liked reptiles. Yeah.
I mean, I know.
Indifferent, maybe a good.
I mean, yeah. Like, if he tomorrow was like, okay, I'm selling everything, I'd be like, okay. Like, I like what we have, and I am partly the reason we have some of the ones we have. Like, it's been
she's gotten me into projects,
but see, the thing is, the ones I've bought and purchased and sought after are things that are for projects. He has stupid shit that is going to do nothing for us.
Stupid shit like olive pythons and water pythons and all the cool stuff.
Stupid. Having the olive python is stupid to me because it's not like we're keeping it in this big, beautiful cage where we see it all the time, and we're not going to breed it. So it's something that we're not doing anything with that sits in a tub.
All right, so it's going in a 6-foot cage in the living room. You got it. I hear you. Loud and clear.
I also don't want it in a cage to take up more space. That's another reason why it's stupid. Because
oh man.
I just think it's pointless. Why do we have this water? I mean, the water python's beautiful and the olive python's beautiful. Totally. I understand their beauty. But what is their purpose? You asked, what is my purpose of my 15 pairs of shoes? Yeah. What is the purpose of your olive python? What?
You only have 50.
Oh, I was definitely
she's rounding down. She's rounding down. All right, she takes up 2.5 closets in the house. All right, she has a dresser and takes up 2.5 closets. I have like half a closet with my clothes.
2.
Oh, you
and a dresser.
That's not going to change, man.
Anyway, less about us. What the hell?
But anyways, what do you call your group of snakes? It's your
collection.
Yeah, you're collecting. Sometimes that's the reason you have shit.
Sometimes that makes me feel more hoardy than other things, though. If that's a word.
Hoardy sounds weird.
Hoardy. Getting real hoardy.
I think that's a nice new word we just developed.
I think it might have already been developed, but to describe a different action.
Oh.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The W.
What?
Hoard.
Right. Whatever the hell you're thinking.
Dictionary definition.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
You really don't, or you're joking?
I'm not sure, but I won't say anything. Okay. So, how about...
Back on track. What were we talking about?
Keeping different types of things and trying them out, but be willing to sell them when you don't need them.
Yeah, if it's not going to work, if you're not getting anything out of it, especially, but it also, realizing your space requirements and your food requirements, and I've kind of gotten to the point where hopefully everything I have will eat small rats, and that'll be the largest thing I have to stock my fridge with, especially because medium rats seem to be like $1 million. But yeah. I'm focusing on a smaller species of boas and pythons and a few select colubrids. That's what I'm working. That's my plan. And some are just weird.
So you mentioned anthill pythons. So antaresia, is that something that's attractive to you in general?
Yes. And I had put up my Cape York spotted pythons a while ago, but I, put them up for a fairly high price because I don't really want to sell them. But I made the decision recently, and it's making these decisions is a fluid process sometimes, but realizing recently that I'm not going to get a whole lot of more space anytime soon. Like I'm looking at least 5 years until maybe the new kid goes to kindergarten. That may be about the time I'll be able to enlarge the herp room, and in that time I will not be able to keep these maclots, not as well as I'd like to keep them, and I'd rather sell them and put them into the hands of someone who would be more interested and have more resources to do that while letting me still keep a nice diverse collection of smaller animals. It doesn't mean I don't like them. It doesn't mean that I'm going to take a hot offer real quick. They're still small now, but yeah, I made some decisions and I stick to them. I'm not really worried about what other people think. I'm more worried about how it affects me and my personal life. But antaresia are pretty cool. Sorry, I went off the rails. But yeah, I really like Anthill pythons. I've always wanted Anthill pythons, and they are just cool and super mean little snakes. They're hungry all the time, but man, they look awesome. They have attitudes. I just love them. I really do. I don't foresee myself getting all species. I like what I have, and I think I'm gonna stick to them. If I got more antaresia, it would probably be more Perthensis, the anthills, because I think it'd be cool to be able to produce a clutch every year, alternating, from adults.
I think that's something that, although the spotted and children have become very plentiful as far as people breeding them, that's still an animal that probably for good reason, as far as getting baby started and stuff like that, hasn't really taken off to the degree of the spotted or the children's.
I'm sorry, I just got a wife text.
Are you in trouble?
No. Yes. No.
A little.
We'll see.
Oh.
Anyway,
sorry.
What was that question? Oh, it's not your fault. It's my stupid fault.
So the Anthill pythons tend to be, I mean, the other antaresia, the children's, the spotted, seem to be very plentiful in the hobby. The Anthill pythons, maybe for good reason, maybe for getting the baby started and breeding and everything like that, haven't necessarily have the amount of people breeding them and the quantity in the hobby. So, I mean, do you think that that's a great project to get into? I mean, that's something you may need to pour a lot of time into, but do you find that it's something cool that, you know, maybe a little bit more unique to you?
I think it'll be cool. I'm not really worried about if they're produced a whole lot. I make a lot of the decisions on what animals I want to work with based off what I just think is cool. Selling happens later, and you know, hopefully I'll make a little money on it at some point, at least to be able to pay for food and other things, but their food, not mine. I really love it. But you know, they're probably not prevalent because they don't have many eggs, and when they do hatch, I mean, it's tough to get them going from everything I hear, and it's a challenge that I think is cool. You know, breeding carpet pythons is cool. I love them, but especially coastals, I mean, there's a pretty good recipe to follow. There's many recipes that work. They work well. I don't have very much trouble getting them started, and a lot of people, I guess, are into that. But I want some more challenges. I want something that might take me, that might be a little difficult. Something there where I might need to get, you know, some anoles and scent some things, or just feed them frozen thawed anoles. I don't know, but I want something that's a little more difficult to work with.
So like, do you? Jesus, she just dropped the mouse and a bottle of wine. We're getting back. All right. So are you someone who, I mean, some people just breed because you get into this, and me included with corn snakes. Obviously, I can breed pretty much 100% of corn snakes all the time. But are you someone who is always looking kind of for a new challenge to take on, whether it be just keeping the animals and breeding the animals?
Not always. I do have limited time. You know, I have a lot of responsibilities here that I need to make sure that I, you know, stay on top of so that, you know, I don't get in trouble. But they deserve it. They definitely do. And I don't want, if keeping snakes in the basement ever disrupts that part of my life, then changes will have to be made, because they're always going to be number one forever. But challenges are what makes it fun. So you know, if I'm going to have a smaller collection, you know, sometimes I don't see the fun in something that's nice and easy every year, unless it's going to be just really cool looking shit, you know. Like last year, I didn't need to breed coastal carpets this year, but I'd never MI'd. It was a repeat pairing, so maternally incubated, maternal brooding, whatever you want to call it. So I basically, I put them together. I was like, I'll breed them and I'll let the female take care of them at all costs. If she bailed on them, I wasn't going to put them in the incubator. And I let them ride. And she did bail at day 43.
Fuck these eggs.
And I just left them in there. I'm like, we'll just see what happens. And, you know, 9 out of the 14 still hatched. Even though the temperatures were plummeting for them. I mean, 80 to, sometimes they were 78, sometimes they were 82. But once she left them, they were never above 83. Probably the 5 that didn't hatch were dried up full term in the egg. And I just don't think I kept the humidity high enough. But, you know, that's something else to push and try is, you know, maybe incubate eggs at a different temperature. Where, you know, everyone always, I think 88 is like, or 87.5 is like what everyone uses for a lot of carpet python stuff. And, you know, maybe the next batch of eggs I get, I'll either let them MI again, let a new one MI, not that one, since she's a quitter. But, you know, or try incubating a lower temperature. I think that's fun. Like a lot of people are afraid to lose a clutch, and you know, I'm not that afraid to lose a clutch necessarily. But I think it's fun to play around with that stuff. I mean, what if I incubated at 84 degrees and it took 74 days and they hatched out? Like, that's pretty cool. Do we know that that can even happen? Or I don't know. I just feel like that in Australia, it doesn't stay 88 degrees on the dot for 60 days or whatever. So they have to be hardier. And I think that the MI clutch that I have last year kind of proved that they're a little hardier than I thought.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because obviously we're to the point with colubrid eggs, which, I mean, shit, I just put them in the room and whatever happens. I've had them take 100 days. I've had them take 53 days, and it's somewhere in between there that they'll come out. But I wonder, I see more and more people going to the like no worries about the incubation with things like carpets, things like longer incubate, things like 84 for 70 days or whatever.
Yeah, who knows?
And then hit the breeding questions.
So someone asked on the chat, like, how do you go about breeding your carpets, and do you do combat at all?
Nope. I haven't had to. So basically, I've kind of got it on a system. I feed for July, for the last half of July, August, and part of September. I feed my females pretty much every week. Not huge meals, but every week. I like to bulk them up. And then October, they fast for the entire month, make sure they kind of clean out their system. And then November 1st, I let room temperatures drop to whatever they go to. I set the heater at 65, so that it doesn't get below that. But day one that I let the temperatures drop, I put the coastals together. And yeah, last year it was November 1st. I dropped temperatures. November 2nd, I put them together, and I got a lock immediately.
Dang.
It was pretty, and it's pretty consistent 2 years in a row. And I have a homozygous xanthic and a possible het xanthic, which really looks like het xanthic. And I'm going to let them go this year and see if I can prove her out. And I've never hatched out a homozygous xanthic, so I'd like to see one. I've heard it's pretty easy to tell, but the coastals are kind of on a rhythm, and I just let it go. But I think there's probably like plenty of ways to be able to breed coastals. I don't think you have to do what I did.
So also the ones you were just talking about, you said 9 of the 14 hatch. Did the ones that hatch seem healthier? The guy was saying a lot of people seem to be saying this recently, that longer periods of incubation for hardier babies, like
or at least larger.
Yeah, were they bigger? Do they, No,
I mean, I take weights on everything. Every baby that I hatch out, at least initial weights. I don't necessarily keep up with it, but they're roughly the same weights as the siblings from last year.
That's interesting.
But that could have been because she bailed on them at the very at day 43. So they could have had some developmental issues. They were developing fast and then developed slow. But anecdotally from people I've talked to, I have heard them, a lot of carpet pythons at least hatch out bigger, stronger from lower and longer incubations.
I feel like we've had that with corn snakes too. The longer they're in those eggs, the bigger they seem to pop out.
Or I've also had really bad 100-day clutches. I mean, that one that we had all type of a couple kinks and stuff because there was a temperature spike kind of at the end, which totally messed it up. Which, I mean, did you see those stillborns that were in the egg? Did you see things like kinks or things like different patterns and stuff like that?
No, they all looked very similar to the rest of the clutch mates. I think there's a graphic picture somewhere on my Facebook business page of trying to I put that up there to remind folks it's that there's some shitty parts of what we do. Breeding snake isn't always like, look at this perfect, beautiful, exactly what I was hoping for, mutation and pattern. Like sometimes they just die and there's nothing you can do about it. I probably could have done something about it this time, but it was all kind of a more or less an experiment to see what happened with that clutch. But no, they all look pretty similar to each other in there.
Yeah, someone has to be, doing stuff like that just to, I guess people are so worried about producing as many babies as possible. And Dan in the chat asked if the Cape Yorks were the ones that, you had mentioned that they were the ones that you were selling, correct?
Was.
Yeah, now you're not?
No, I'm keeping, since I'll be releasing the Mac lots, they're staying.
So Do you know how that goes back to Cape York? Do you know what the origin story of that line is?
No idea. I have read and heard that a lot of the spotted pythons that are in Cape York don't necessarily even look like what we call Cape York types, but I don't really have a lot of information on the background of those guys. I just know in the American hobby here that they're known as Cape York types. I think they're a really cool looking type of spotted python. They're not terribly common, but they're not flooded or they're not super rare. I just like the pattern and I want to produce some.
And were those individuals striped?
Not really. Not like Ryan Young's. Ryan Young's got some really killer looking striped spotted pythons that have a Cape York look to them, at least the type look.
Mm-hmm.
At least I think.
Is there anyone really going hard on as far as lineage and stuff on those guys?
I think it's tough, but I don't really know. Again, I mean, I hate to give you a bunch of I don't know answers.
No, that's fine.
I don't know. I'm not going to pretend, but I don't really know. I'm sure if mutton's producing anything. Do you have like a bell that you ring when someone says mutton?
If you say it 3 times, maybe.
Does he appear?
It's usually me acknowledging it. We've gone multiple shows without his name coming up. Like for a while, it was like 10 shows straight. His name, it's just gonna happen. It's okay. I usually call him the Godfather because that's what it just felt like. Everyone's like, "Oh, Mutton has this good one," and "Oh, he's my friend Nick Mutton." I just call him up. Everyone's his fucking friend.
Well, that's what we had a string of purist Morelia people on. So I mean, come on, that's what you're gonna get. But
some other people I think that I've talked to a lot about antaresia are Andy Grossman. I think he has got a lot of cool stuff with antaresia, and I talked to a buddy of mine, Chris Bellamy, who I pester him all the time about like, hey, how's it going raising your he hatched out some Simpsons pythons, and I bug him all the time because I'm trying to get some info on in case I produce something. Now, what's he doing? He's like, same as last time, man. Leave me alone.
So are you
not a friendish way?
Are you trying to add any pythons to your collection right now, or are you just kind of trying to get to a spot where you can maintain where you're at?
No, I'm done adding. I say that, but as far as I can tell, I'm done adding. I've put together a collection plan that I'm happy with, and I just got to sell some Maclot's pythons, and I'm not in a rush. But yeah, that sucks. I mean, sometimes you sell stuff for reasons that aren't because you don't like them. But I think I'm set in the next few years. I've got 2 more individual animals that I need to acquire to complete a pair. I need a female Sanzinia, but I have that in the works, which is Madagascan tree boa. And then next year, hopefully I'll be in the market for a rough scale python male.
Ah, I see where you're going. It seems like everyone's into Sanzinia these days. Which phase are you interested in?
I have a Mandarin phase male. I like him. He's pretty cool.
I think I saw, what's the other phase? What do they call the other phase?
Greens.
Yeah, because I saw one at the Philly Zoo, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Why is that there? But I thought the Mandarin was the more common.
It is.
Okay, phase of them. But, I mean, super, super cool snakes. So are those more like, do you keep one now? You're just trying to complete a pair?
Yeah, I have one now. I have a male.
Everyone's getting really excited about Sanzinia in the chat. They really like them.
Man, I tell you what, in person, they're so different. I mean, they're just smooth, like just as they move and just as they feel. I mean, they're a smooth snake. They are the direct opposite of a rough-scaled python.
It's very weird because I see more and more python people. That may be their introduction to boas. Do they act very much like there's so many Morelia people in them at this point? Do they kind of fit in that mold somewhat as far as keeping goes?
I mean, they're pretty hardy. I haven't had any. I've been keeping the one I have exactly like I keep my carpets, except I give him a little more climbing opportunity. He's got a perch in there, and I give him a. If I keep an animal in a cage, I usually provide a humid hide box as well, just so it has an option if it wants to. But yeah, everything's kind of kept at roughly the same temperatures in my snake room, so it's been a pretty bulletproof animal.
And do they perch more green tree and perfect coils, or like Amazons, they kind of go up into a corner? And then also, what are those temperatures that you're keeping them at?
I don't think they really perch much at all. If I think a lot of times if you see one perch, it's probably because someone put it there. I think they're just as happy on the ground or underneath something as, I mean, and this is, you know, I've worked with Cincinnati and zoos before, and they were the same type of way. But my temperatures, my snake room it fluctuates right now between 77 and 79 throughout most of the year. And most animals have hot spots between 84 and 85 ish, right around there. Not something terribly crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly how I keep my Morelia. Even though people, you know, back in the day, everything was 88 to 90. If it was called a python or a boa, that thing needs to be 88 or 90 degrees or something like that.
Yeah. Everything needed to have a hot spot of 90 for sure.
Yeah, which, I mean, I think, I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's obviously a cold-blooded animal. We used to feed them more. I feel like, this is probably really stupid, but like they have a battery. Think about a battery, and the higher they are heat-wise, that battery drains quicker. And I feel like your snakes kind of, especially you see that with diamond pythons, right? When we kept them hot for so long, they had a lifespan of like 5 to 8 years in comparison to now animals are living 15. So that's just a random thing. I don't know if you totally disagree with that.
It's draining physiologically, I would imagine. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, the number of obese snakes I see photos of, including ones I used to have or still even have, are pretty high. It's a pretty high number, and because we don't really understand it. And a lot of people, like when you think about feeding a snake, usually most people think about it like, well, is it once a week, once every other week, you know, something like that, once a month, depending on how big it is. But I try to think of things on an annual basis, you know.
It has to be, yeah, it used to be, it had to be this formula. You do it every week, or, you know, but it doesn't seem that way. I don't know if you prescribe to something like seasonal feeding or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. In my breeders especially. I think that young animals are a little more, they acclimate easier to more feeding, but they're putting so much of that fuel that they're eating and consuming into growth that I think you can feed them a little more often. Plus, I mean, they need to eat a little more often. But adults, I mean, there's no real reason to feed them at any carpet python I'm aware of once a week. My adult male breeder coastal, I plan on 8 to 10 meals for him a year, and that's with 3 or 4 months of fasting. So,
and are those large meals when you give them to them, or small meals?
Not necessarily. I usually don't offer anything bigger than a small or medium rat or several small meals. I feed a variety of stuff. Feed a lot of chicken chicks and quail and just whatever I can find. I try to offer a variety.
And do you feel that that's necessary, or do you just like to do that maybe?
Necessary? I don't know. I would imagine. I mean, it's hard to argue because, you know, they've been kept very well for a long time and on mainly rodent diets, and you don't see too much. But I mean, I think it's fun to vary it. You know, a lot of my animals eat mostly birds, mostly chicken, mostly quail, and then I supplement with rodents and occasional reptilinks and things like that. Is it necessary? I don't know. Do I like doing it? Yeah, I'd rather see it. I mean, I'd rather than eat a variety of things.
I think it's weird because obviously we can survive on eating like Lucky Charms every day. And we would do just fine, but it's hard to tell for a snake what is healthy, what's not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's still under evaluation, not just in the private hobby, but in zoos as well. Is like, what's a healthy snake look like? And it's on a species by species basis most times. You know, in my view, I think of it this way. Once a snake is fat and you know it, it's really hard to make it not fat. But if you are a little more cautious and you end up having an animal that's a little too lean, it's a lot easier to put weight on that animal. Mm-hmm. I'd rather have that problem. You know, I think, you know, long term, I think it's healthier.
That's something that I have definitely. You have that corn snake that feeds well. And I have accidentally made snakes fat, and it's really hard to get their body back to right where I want it to, especially in corn snakes, it seems. Even though metabolism is supposed to be fast and you would think they would lose weight, they are like built to maintain their fatness.
Keep it on.
Well, they get that junk in the trunk, you know. I've seen a lot of
those hips,
those little fat saddles around the cloaca. Like, I don't think those go away.
No, it's very hard.
I've seen one go away completely. It's way easier to add weight, just in general. So,
and they're very prone to things like fatty deposits for some reason, and I've had that happen, and it doesn't go away, and it sucks. But so I guess switching on to that. What colubrids do you have? Because I know
you said the Okeeties.
It's technically pronounced Colubrid, but it's hard for me to do.
No, only
Owen was right. Owen was right
that way. But
did you check his sources? Did he?
Wayne Booth, Dr. Wayne Booth said that Latin
majority rules.
It's hard for my mouth to say it that way, but that's how you say it.
He's the only one who says call. I literally can't even say
Colubrid.
Colubrid.
But that's
I think they're both accepted, and I acknowledge both. I say colubrid because a long time ago I realized that a lot of times with Latin names, the faster you can say it usually ends up being the right way. I used to always say crotalus for rattlesnakes, and then most people would like crotalus, you know, and you're like, oh, well, why'd you say that so damn fast? It sounds cooler to say crotalus, but I think their correct pronunciation is crotalus. And once you go through a lot of those kind of names, you start realizing that a lot of them are just said kind of fast, and seems to always be the right way.
And it's a dead language that no one speaks, so who really cares?
True that. So if it's a dead language, no one can tell me how to say it.
Yeah. So it's colubrid.
So corn snakes and colubrids in general, or colubrids. What are you working with? Obviously, you said Okeeties, but do you have anything else kicking around?
Yeah, I have some Hart County, Kentucky corns that are really, really cool.
I don't even know what that is.
It's just a county in Kentucky. It's not a mutation. It's just, I think it's pretty. I have it for more sentimental reasons. You know, I grew up in Kentucky, and they have a very small population in Kentucky. So it's pretty cool to have an animal that's derived from that area. The Okeeties.
What's the overall look of that animal from Kentucky?
I think it's a really attractive specimen, but compare it when it's right next to an Okeetee, it's tough. But I think they're really cool. They have a very grayish base pattern throughout their entire body, and there's some real subtle oranges that kind of grew up through it. And I think I have some photos on my Facebook page or whatnot. But
I googled it. They're like rusty in the best sense.
Yeah, I think it's a wild type pattern. It's a normal pattern corn snake with some. It's a very dark. It's not very bright, but I just think it's a very cool snake. I like them a lot.
It's something. There's something obviously we like. I like having black rat snakes because that's when I was growing up in upstate New York. That's one of the only snakes we have. So especially large snake. When you see a 6-foot black rat snake, and usually up there they're like completely black, and that's something that you can't. It's just some sentimental thing.
Yeah, agreed. It's usually, besides garter snakes, if you grew up anywhere in the Midwest, or Ohio's considered Midwest, but really, I don't really think it is. But where I grew up, it was either rat snakes or garter snakes. Typically, is what I would find, and you get tired of garter snakes all the time. Well, not that they're not cool, but you see, there's definitely a lot more of them, and occasionally you come across a black rat, and you're just like, dang, that is a boss snake, man. when you're used to garter snakes. So I think they're awesome animals, and I definitely will keep the ones that I have.
Absolutely. So
are you saying you want to expand our black rat collection in the future? Is what
I want white-sided. I want, obviously the licorice is the white-sided. I want the A-male white-sided. I would like to have all the variations of rat snakes. I would like to have white-sided yellow rat snakes. I just like to have all the rat snakes, I think. I don't know where you fall on that. Are you content with your A-males, your blue-eyed, and then your A-male female?
I am. Everything that I've got currently species-wise and mutation-wise is what I plan on keeping. So there's a lot of room for other people to get into those and move on and kind of move those projects, keep moving them forward. But I'm good with what I have now.
I do really like the white-sided stuff.
They are fucking cool, aren't they?
But why is it white-sided?
Adult white-sided is. They're good looking.
It shouldn't still be called a black rat.
Well, it's
Eastern rat snake, right?
It just feels dumb to call it a white-sided
thing.
black rat.
What's an eastern rat snake? What's a western rat snake? What's a Texas rat snake anymore? I don't know. Everyone wants to change.
Gotta read some paper. I did this. I read some papers on it, and
they're all the same apparently.
Just because something is legitimate and it's probably the right way to go, doesn't mean you have to like it. You know what I mean?
That is very apparent in Morelia as well as.
But I mean, the same thing with American herps. I mean, Latin names have changed a lot over the last 15 years or so. Toads are not bufo in America. I mean, or in North America, they're Anisaurus. Eumeces used to be the genus of skinks, and now it's Plestiodon. Or, a lot of things have changed. Lithobates, not rana for bullfrogs and stuff. I mean, a lot of things change, and I pretty much go with whatever SSAR, which is the Society for the Study of Amphibians and Reptiles. Whatever they acknowledge, I usually just go with that. They got a lot of smarter people than me who are all in agreement, so I just go with them.
I go with bullshit hobby science. I'm like chondro and
oh, I love chondro. Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
And then if you call a Slowinski's rat snake or corn snake, if you call it a Kisachi or whatever, just go fuck yourself. Those are like fighting words.
You and James go back and forth on that. He says he's from.
They're just weird little lines, I believe, that we all draw, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah. Well, we're just humans who have opinions based on the experiences we've had in our life. So your experiences are different than mine and different than someone else's, and you just go with what you know.
And ultimately, I mean, we are just trying to put names to things just because humans like to categorize things and put things in nice little tidy corners, and this is this and this is that. But turns out that nature, especially with something like the Slowinski's corn snake, where it was thought to be an emery rat that bred with a corn snake, and that was just an integrated area. But then all of a sudden, like 1997 or something, they're broken up to their own species. I mean, that's just us trying to, but nature doesn't follow our rules, our names and stuff like that. So, I mean, the gray area, I feel like, is always going to be there and up for interpretation.
Yeah. And I think we're also, it's hard to imagine that we're in the middle of speciation and, natural selection as it's happening right now. So, I mean, we're just a tiny little moment of time of, the bigger picture, so a lot of time we may be seeing the beginnings of many new species that won't be brand new species for another several hundred years or longer. So I don't know, but there are way smarter people than me who get paid to research this and use actual data, actual information to make these calls. And then a lot of other people who are very similar to those people review that data, and then they also agree or not agree, depending on what it is. And again, that's kind of what I go with, is like those people. Because who am I? I'm just a zookeeper.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm not anyone you should listen to. I just have stupid opinions formed around, this hobby that doesn't really matter. But as far as you said, something that is seemingly interested, especially rough scale pythons. I mean, that seems like something that is somewhere between, I don't know where it gets keeled scales and a green tree python and something red. I don't know what the hell it is, but what got you interested in rough scale pythons, and kind of when do you plan acquiring them?
I think it's for like a lot of people, rough scale pythons. You remember that Mark O'Shea program from a long time ago where he found some, and that they're rare, and the idea that they're even available now and that they're bred, you can buy one in Australia for like a can of beer. Like, they seem to be like everywhere. And it's just amazing to actually have that specimen. So, I definitely want to get a male and breed them in the future, but I'm just stoked to have one. I'm just stoked to be able to get that thing out and feel a python with keeled scales. So look at those blue eyes, and it's just an outstanding specimen to have in hand. And a lot of times that's what drives my decisions to get animals too. Once I have it in hand, I'm like, well, shit, this is way cooler than even the photo. So, and maybe it's a little nostalgic is, I'm holding that rough scale python thinking of 16 to 18-year-old me watching that Mark O'Shea program, and that I can't believe I have one right here in my hand. But they're just an incredibly attentive animal. Mine needs to move up a cage size, and so I can watch it a little more. It's in a top mount.
You do have a female?
I do, yeah. I got a female from Dave D, a Vibrant Viridis. I thought I'd give him a shout out because he was a really easy person to do business with.
What's his name?
Dave D.
And I don't think he even needs, as far as between rough scales, and then I don't know if he's still working with Green Trees, but the Green Tree collection he at least used to have.
Wow.
Just ridiculous.
I just write down any names as possible people to have on the podcast.
Man, you can tell that, I'm outside. I'm getting darker and darker.
I've been wanting to ask you, are there no mosquitoes in Cincinnati? Because we would have gotten eaten alive sitting out here in Pennsylvania for that long.
I'm one of those people who, for some reason, I don't tend to get bit by mosquitoes much, but...
God damn, you suck.
I know, right? But tonight, there don't seem to be many out. Oh, there were. I came out here just to look around. I'm sure as it gets darker, those little assassins will find their way around to me. I said I don't get bit much. I still get bit. So, but I wanted to give the family the indoor area so they could feel free to do what they wanted to do, and we could say that
seems reasonable. Now, speaking of which, do you get out and do you field herp at all?
Yeah.
Besides catching Mississippi map turtles?
Even when I'm not paid to, I like to go out. I've got a really good friend of mine and a coworker. I go with him on occasion. He's got spots. He's been in the area for a long time, so he's got some really cool spots here and there, and I like to go with him, whether it's 2 or 3 hours away. I don't go field herping as much as I'd like to. And, I think that everyone probably feels that same way. And I don't see it increasing in the future either. So I get out there as much as I can.
Yeah, it's something that's... it's kind of like deep sea fishing. It's not really that fruitful. It's not like you can go out for 20 minutes, find a snake, and be happy. Especially if you want to.
Most of the time, just being out there.
Right.
You're out in a newer area, or you're probably not by a lot of civilization, at least. So you're in either a forested area or an old limestone mill or whatever you're at, and it's just fun to be out there. And if you find something, that's cool.
So what would be your favorite things in the area to find?
It's always fun finding ringneck snakes, honestly. Last year I went herping and we found a good chunk of timber rattlesnakes a little further south. And those were really cool to find. I'm never necessarily looking for something. I'm just looking for anything. I'm lame. I'm just everything's cool, man. Look at this. Caught a cave salamander. Oh, look at this. I caught an American toad. That's fine.
No, he does that too. He's like...
You can't be picky when you're, picking, when you're turning logs or turning rocks. When you see something, you see something. And in Texas, finding a tarantula, I don't like tarantulas, but I found something. Or a scorpion, I found it.
This is totally not podcast related, but I want to go someplace herping where no one else is around, because you like to go to places where people are walking on a trail.
It's only because
I'm standing there awkward watching you trying to turn over a log and making awkward faces at people walking by us.
She thinks I look like some type of psycho, but we always
does, and it's a very awkward situation for me just standing
But that's the thing, we usually...
What?
I said just be a psycho with him.
No. I just want to go I want to go isn't there herping where no one's around?
Go very urban herping, which is in the city of Dallas, going looking for copperheads.
We need to go more rural.
Well, then we got to drive further. That's far.
I'll
That's
do
fine.
that if that means there's no people around to give us weird looks.
And
I
see,
mean,
that's where you got to connect with that herp society. Find those people who have been in the area for, 25 years in the herp society, and they know the spots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They know where to go. Man,
it's something that you can make a full day out of.
Give me enough alcohol, I'll be fine.
Well, that's usually a bad recipe, but
yeah. Different subject. You were talking about family earlier. So, and I know you said your wife works at the zoo, but is she interested in what you keep at home? Does she help out a lot? Does your daughter help at all since you have corns and stuff like that?
No. Short answer. He tolerates it. He tolerates it.
No, same boat. Okay.
He's supportive, but tolerates it. We've got our own hobby, so I just do what I do, and she just basically puts up with it.
And your daughter's interest?
She likes it, but it's a tiny little room, and things bite, and I don't know.
She doesn't handle the
got a lot of other things on her plate already, so I kind of, and sometimes it's like my respite. It's that's my man cave, is going down to my 48 square feet of snake heaven.
Now, as far as, I don't think I asked you directly, the numbers that you keep now in your collection?
Total number? It's not many. Including offspring or just breeders?
Just breeders.
Just breeders and future breeders? I think I'm right around 26 or 30 or something in there.
Okay, so that's super manageable. And how many clutches did you have this year, and how many clutches do you plan to have?
I don't ever want to have more than 5 clutches in a year. I had 3 clutches this year. The rat snakes double clutched, and that's something I think about too. And I think it's fun because I don't want to overwhelm, myself or flood the hobby with anything and just breed to breed. I want to put some serious thought into it. So I usually try to think about the number of babies that I can handle, and then I take off like 15, like a clutch, because I think I probably overshoot it. So 5 seems to be the number, especially if I'm going to breed antaresia like the Perthensis. I mean, I'm only looking at, if I'm lucky, 1 to 5 eggs or so. And but those 1 to 5 offspring could be a lot tougher to raise than,
that might be 60% of your time.
Hey, buddy. Oh, your dog's there.
She wants to go out. Hi, little girl.
Dogs.
So my black rats are far away from breeding. What's the normal clutch size on them?
I typically get 14. And the double clutch, the second clutch, I got 8 with 7 fertile. But last year she laid 14. This year she laid 14. I had some white-sideds a few years ago that I released, that I let go of once I got this new pair. And they produced 12. So I would say you're probably looking at 12 to 15. I'm sure they can lay more. My female's not entirely huge, but she's a 2009 animal, and she's not going to get a whole lot bigger.
Yeah, so that's plenty of years to get an adult size on her.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I may need to go inside soon and turn on a light.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, you're white, but you're getting pretty dark.
You can only see the whites of your eyes.
That was creepy. Sorry. All right, I'm going to move, but I can still talk while moving, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
That was my old man grunt.
Yeah, whenever you move, get out of chairs, go down in chairs, you make noises.
Yep. All the time. Either my mouth or my knees.
So now your average Morelia clutch must be a little bit more than those black rats, right?
No, honestly.
Really? So you must keep your females relatively small.
Yeah, I mean they don't get very big. Sorry, I know it's still dark in here.
It's okay.
There
you go.
There we go. I'll just stand up. That's fine.
Oh no.
Oh, you're fine. So I think, well, I had a big tiger female, and she laid 26 eggs. But typically, all my other clutches have been, actually, they've all been 14 eggs.
That's pretty odd.
Yeah. I guess that's the magic number.
But if you get 14 anthill pythons, that would be pretty impressive.
That'd be really impressive. I think I would feel bad for that anthill python before she oviposited. She'd be huge.
She'd be throwing up eggs coming out both ends. How far along are you with them?
I'm going to give them a shot this year. They're 2014 animals, which is crazy because the female's like less than 200 grams. The male is right around 100 grams, and they're adults. So that's pretty sweet. So I'm going to give them a run this year, the Cape Yorks, and the homozygous exanthic to the possible heterozygous exanthic. So those are the 3 that I'm looking for next year.
Is 4 years typical for an anthill python?
No idea. No idea. I think they're
trying to spring breed them or winter breed them.
I'm going to put them through the same paces as my my coastals right now, and I'll make adjustments next year if needed. Occasionally I just I palpate a lot of the females, and I try to feel for follicle development. It's very tough, I think, in antaresia, especially the presences. But I can almost always feel them in other species. So as soon as I feel follicles building, I'll start pairing them up a little bit if I feel like it could happen, because the coastals I just put together anyways. I think I was telling her earlier, but the antaresia, if I feel follicles in there, I'll put them together no matter what time of the year it is.
Are you, because I missed some of the breeding talk, are you a kind of cohaber for the winter, or do you pair on and off, take the male out, put the male back in?
I pair on and off, usually for about a week.
But he was saying, like, right when he drops the temperatures, he starts
clockwork.
Like
day 1 or 2, yeah. Let me see if I can.
And he got like a lockup, like almost immediately after dropping the temperatures.
Is that worse or better?
You've gone blue, a little blue.
Oh, all right. I just didn't know backlit by the sun, basically.
Either way is fine. It's fine. I just feel bad you're standing up.
There. Oh, whatever.
Yeah, it all works. And as far as the anthill pythons, I mean, where did you get them from, and were they feeding on rodents right off the bat?
I didn't get them as young animals. Actually, you don't see them available very often, to be honest with you. And I saw them, and I made an offer and bought them from Marissa Casey. And they are Don Meeker animals. I don't know them that well. And
is that Meeker the same Meeker as like Sonoran gophers or something?
Maybe.
A line of, yeah, because that would be a really weird combination of snakes to keep. But I know Meeker from that. There's a Meeker line of some type of colubrid. Patelphis, I think.
You're probably right, because I don't know that much. But I don't know what else he produces. I checked his website, and I was like, oh, okay. He still produces stuff.
But I think it may be like a very old school dude.
Yes. I don't see him sometimes I see stuff from him on King Snake and Fauna, but never on Facebook. And then the Cape Yorks before it was a bad word, there was Isis Reptile, so I think changed their name recently. But that's where I got them as pretty much adults, so I haven't raised any. That's cheating, I guess, but I don't see them often, so I was gonna get them no matter what. If it takes 4 years for them to acclimate and finally produce, that's fine by me too.
I feel like those are one of those things that you scoop up no matter what. And I mean, you see it all the time with things like scrub pythons or things like you have like Max and stuff like that. I mean, people get into them, they get out of them. There's only a few people who keep them long term. And I mean, if you really want to get them, you scoop them when you can.
This is probably the only species, the Prothensis, that I told myself if I saw a decent pair for sale, I was gonna get them. And I just did, and that was a while. That was over a year ago, but I haven't regretted it. The Prothensis are awesome. I mean, it's just mind blowing that they're so small.
Are they
male weighs the same weight as 4 hatchling coastal carpets?
That's crazy. And do you keep them in like 28 quart tubs as adults, or what are you keeping them in?
I think I'm going to move them up to 28s. Right now they're in 16 quart bins.
Yeah.
And they seem happy as they have room, but I'll give them the other. I'm going to move them up to 28 quart soon. Ooh, that's fun.
What are you doing?
She
talks.
Making noises because I stopped scratching her, and so that's her little.
Oh, I just thought you were really hungry.
No, that's a dog. Those are her angry noises. She's a intense growler.
Are you gonna talk into mics or what?
Excuse
I can
me.
hear it.
Thank you.
All right. She's a loud talker. So as far as the anthills go, is there any particular? I mean, obviously they're red, but is there any better line than anything else, or
Man,
do you know of anything?
It's another I don't know for you.
Yeah, that's fine.
You know, a lot of times with the collection plan I made myself, I was staying for the most part away from mutations. Long term, I think I'd always be happier to have a wild type looking animal. Not to say that there aren't some awesome mutations. I have no problem with mutations, but I just wanted Prothensis. Now, at some point, it might be nice to get another pair of Prothensis so I can have different lines and, you know, as genetically different as possible. I think that would be cooler to have. And I mean, that's one of the reasons I'd like to have more of those so I can produce some every other year, but have different lines available or different offspring, less related, because they all have to be related at some point.
Do you know if does producing take a lot out of the females that you definitely want to give them a year off?
From watching them eat, with their appetite, I would say they could probably breed every year without any problems. But you know, I don't plan on it. At most, if I breed something, I'll breed it 2 years in a row, then give it at least a year off. But I plan on trying to maternally incubate as many clutches as possible with pythons. So if they don't recover, I'll make that decision in August probably every year if I'm going to pair them up.
So you would do your first year of breeding them, you would let them maternally incubate?
The Prothensis, maybe. I don't know. That's maybe. But everything else I have, I think I would. I'd have an incubator waiting for those, though, in case. Unlike the last clutch that I might, if I was just going to let it ride no matter what. But
well, I think that is something that is bred to a certain point to where, like, I feel like it's reasonable for you to have a little bit more worry if to have those snakes in the hobby is more important than a coastal carpet or some coastal whatever. But
yeah, I would done it, and I think they're cool, and I want to hold a 1 or 2 gram baby. You know, it's just.
Is that how small they come out?
From what I've read, 2 to 3 grams is normal, and I wouldn't doubt that something variation.
So that's for perspective. I mean, that is smaller than a corn snake.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, they're small. I mean, their adults are smaller than corn snakes.
That's true. I mean, I've seen adults, are much smaller. I mean, what do you think? Because I saw this 16 quart deli cup. I remember I was at the Rochester show and I was trying to make a purchase between an anthill python and a water python. Clearly I took a water python. I'm not sure why.
Nothing but
there was this adult, there was a proven breeder in a 16 quart deli cup, which pretty much the proven breeder could almost fit in the palm of your hand.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Wait, you bought a water python at a Rochester show?
Rexpo, yeah. There was an anthill python breeder and a water python breeder.
You're never going to see that. Like, I don't know.
I know, yeah. It's very.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know anyone who buys
that's
a water
why that show is
python
cool.
at a show.
Because
like, that's insane.
There's a guy in Rochester who's been breeding one pair of water pythons for like the last 15 years. So he's one of those like old school guys.
And he was the same as the anthill guy or different guy?
No, different guy. They're just like random old school guys up there.
That's super surprising. Okay.
Yeah. But it's cool.
I don't think I've ever seen the pygmies, so the anthills at a show. I don't think unless I missed them, I didn't see them at Tinley the last couple of years either. So, I mean, and that I've seen a lot of shit at Tinley.
Yeah. And this guy was selling like breeding pairs for $500 or something, which seems super cheap. Yeah, because he couldn't find. Jesus Christ, he couldn't find. You know, he's probably not an online guy. he's at a show and like no one gives a shit about anthill pythons at a show for some reason. You take them out, they probably try to eat your finger, and yeah, I guess he had no other outlet for him. But
yeah, who knows? The thing is, like, they don't take up a lot of room to keep for a little while longer, but
right,
really, they don't. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine not having that species. I've enjoyed having them since I came in. I mean, they're ate right away. I don't know. They just got better. They got cool little personalities. Usually it's mean, but it's still a cool personality trait.
Yeah, and it's weird that they've been around. I mean, they had to have been around for quite a while as far as captive breeding goes, because it's not like we're shipping in more. So you would think after a certain series of generations of captive breeding and getting them started, they'd be easier to start, and they would maybe have a little bit less of an attitude. But it doesn't seem that way.
No, and I think a lot of people are just thrown off by there are a lot of people who want like a big macho python, and anthills just aren't those. And there's no mutations, and they're not outwardly like bright and gorgeous. So a lot of people, I just don't even think, get into them, and I think that's part of the reason they're rare. But man, I think they adhere to, or they appeal to a lot of people who are really into it and like the species themselves. Yeah, I don't know. I can't say enough about them. I'll just ramble and ramble.
I think if people were more reasonable with their capacity to keep animals, maybe antaresia in general would be a little bit more of a popular keep in comparison. So many people are willing to go get a retic or something like.
I think for some reason in a lot of people's minds, like price compares to size.
They're like, I don't want this $400
little thing, right? They're thinking, if I'm gonna drop all this money, it better be some big mondo stuff. And I don't know why our brains work that way, but I think that's just how our brains work. Like, the bigger the snake, the more the money they're willing to drop.
Big snakes appeal to certain people, that's for sure. But
yeah,
it's hard to convince yourself. I don't know. For some reason, it's hard to convince yourself to drop a lot of money on something that's so little. I don't know why, but it is.
Yeah, it depends. If you get a well-started antaresia, you're not going to have a problem. Once they're started, I mean, these things will just eat forever. I mean, they've never refused a meal for me. And talking with people who have bred them, like once they're consistently taking food, like they'll never ever. I've never heard of one stopping and having an issue.
I never got the fact that an animal was like that. The fact that everyone says that they try to eat everything unless they're right out of the egg, and then they don't want to eat anything. But once they get started, they'll eat anything. Like, I don't get it. Like, why their demeanor changes once they find out what
food is.
What food is, yeah.
Or what we want them to eat. A lot of antaresia would come out and want to eat. I bet if you offered a Knowles and other lizard-scented stuff, you might not have as much of an issue.
And I'm sure that's probably what they're supposed to be eating.
Yeah, so when I say well-established, usually it refers to they're on rodents. But I mean, at this point, it's 2018. You can get anything you want. I have Langaha, leaf-nosed snakes, and I just have a freezer full of anoles. And I got them eating frozen thawed anoles. And that was easy. It's not like this stuff's difficult to get. 30 years ago, I was like, man, I have to go get quail, or I have to go get, and you're just like, all you have to do is click a few buttons.
Absolutely.
You have quail like next week. It's not difficult. But something like the rat snakes, I don't know if you've seen this with corns. It's ridiculous. Like, they want to eat and they don't know it. Like, how I usually get all these things to start eating is, they want to kill me. So I just hold a little tiny pinky until they strike a couple times, and then it sticks to their mouth and I freeze, and then they eat it.
Well, I've been
like all of them, every single one.
I've been assist feeding mouse tails to 18 of them. So those, and I have there's just always a couple that have zero will to live. They do not want to eat anything. I can literally, almost to the point of force feeding, get it all the way down their mouth, and they can regurgitate.
Oh man.
And it's like, what the
fuck? Nothing more frustrating than that. No.
We gotta try the laundry detergent thing.
Yeah, I mean, try a lot of things. I do a null scenting, which usually works. This year, though, totally struck out on that for some reason. Boiled pinkies worked on a few of them. Last year, if I null scented something or if I gave a part of an null, automatic. Everything was going for it. This year, there's a whole clutch that whenever they see anything happen, they just run away immediately. And it doesn't matter what happens. They're just runners.
We gotta try Jason Nelson's weird shit.
Yeah, Jason Nelson apparently he wipes them off and he'll even rub them in dirt outside. And for some reason that works. And I've never heard that before.
Yeah, me either. I mean, whatever you get to work, like there's so many ways to make something happen, you know, so many methods that seem to work. And yeah, we've tried all of them. I'm sure you've had clutches before. You've tried the most random of shit.
I go, what happens if I put it in this tub with the king snake after, 3 months or 4 months? I mean, there's just a certain point where it's like this, and it's hard because a lot of those ones are just really cool looking that I don't want to give up on. But I know a lot of people would just give it to the king snake or something like that. But I can't bring myself to do it yet this year, but it happens sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that moment changes on a yearly basis. What is your cutoff? I had last season, 2017, I had a carpet python that hatched and went 8.5 months without eating.
So it lived 8.5 months at normal temperature without eating?
It's still alive. It's the last one I have for sale for that from that clutch. And then it just started eating. One day I just got real mad and I was like, come on, why won't you eat? And I don't like to let anything go if I don't have to. And I tease fed it, maybe a little rougher than I usually do. And I don't know what it was, but it bit it, wrapped, and I was like, what? Freeze. Don't move. And I just sat there about 25 minutes, barely moving, watching this thing finally take down a hopper mouse or something. So, yeah, you never know. Python's a little different. I don't think a corn snake's really going to make it 8.5 months. I think your 3.5 months is probably equivalent to a carpet python's 8.5 months. So,
yeah, I have a couple going on 2 months, and I mean, you could see some of them at the same time period. I can have some go 2 months, look totally fine body structure wise. I can have some go 2 months, look terrible. You can see their spine and everything. So, I mean, it goes kind of individual with corn snakes, it seems. What?
Yeah, it changes every year. And
18 is just so many that we can't get to eat.
I mean, do what you can do. And that's part of the sad part of the sad part of breeding snakes. Like I was saying earlier, throwing the eggs of fully formed but dried out babies, sometimes it sucks.
Yeah.
But the good outweighs the bad. There are so many positives and fun times in it. But I think a lot of people don't really, especially newer people, don't understand how shitty it can be.
Yeah, I think they think
really you like the animals.
Yeah, you see all the pictures on Facebook when people hatch them out, but I mean, there's plenty of animals that don't make it, or plenty of animals that do look amazing when they hatch out that don't want to eat. Sometimes your coolest looking animals don't want to eat, and it's just something we deal with.
And see, that's part of the reason I don't want to have a huge collection or have that many babies. If I do have a really kick-ass one, I want to make sure I have time to devote to it and get it going. I'd rather have 30 awesome, well-started babies than 60, and most of them are good, but there's a couple of handfuls of problems, and I don't know. I just don't have time for it all.
Yeah, I mean, if I was this guy who produces 1,000 corn snakes and wholesales most of them, would I mess with these 18 to assist feed them? Fuck no. You would they'd probably be sold before you even get them started eating or some shit, or sold or fed off immediately, or brought to a king cobra breeder or something. But I mean, we're still at the level where we can mess around with that kind of stuff.
It's
frustrating and good though at the same time. I mean, sometimes it's rewarding, sometimes it's disappointing.
It builds character, right?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Our friend Dan in the chat said he has a Palmerston jungle that wouldn't eat, and he dropped its tub while cleaning, and then after that, it started hammering mice.
Damn. Well, whatever works. I wouldn't recommend repeating that.
I'm gonna drop all my snakes now.
But just like weird things like that, you know, like I guess.
Or the whole car ride thing, taking on a car ride.
Right.
None of that makes sense. But
well, they've been on a car ride. They went on a car ride from Dallas to Philadelphia.
I still don't want to
lots of work sometimes. I've had work. You know, going from like the second shelf to the fifth shelf or something, but something as simple as that sometimes. Like I reshuffle because my OCD needs to make it all fit well. Like as snakes get sold or move on, and I can't have like gaps. Like, so moving them sometimes, and all of a sudden that one will start eating. I'm just like, well, whatever, man. I guess you decided it was time.
Just didn't like that little space you're in.
Yeah. So one question I wanted to ask you before we get going is, I really liked your pictures that you took of your black rats with the moss and everything. Is that just like something in your background? How'd you get a rat snake to stay semi-still to take the picture, and what was kind of your method there?
You know, one day, a buddy of mine at Sawfish Reptiles, he always takes his pictures outside, and they always look so much better. You know, I have a little photo tent, and that's how I used to take pictures, and probably will have to do that in the winter because I don't want anything to die. But, man, I went outside and was looking for a cool spot, and I found a couple, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to keep taking photos here. And, I mean, nice thing about digital photography, it's all with my iPhone. I'm too lazy to go break out like a Nikon or something. I mean, it's pretty good pictures, I think, for an iPhone.
Yeah.
But, I just put my hand over it and then have the camera ready and focused and take a bunch of shots. For every 2 or 3 that I keep, I probably took 40.
Right.
And the odd, you nail it on like the first 3 shots. You're like, oh, shit, yeah.
Yeah, if you put our hand over ours, it's going to bite you.
Yeah, but you have a just perfectly lime green, mossy fucking rock in your backyard.
Yeah, I didn't grow that on purpose. I just looking around and I was like, hey, this could look cool.
I've been looking at Home Depot at like house plants and shit. I'm like, how can I make something look that fucking good? But it's not happening.
Hey, in Pennsylvania, you probably have a lot easier time finding some moss than you did in Texas.
That is true. I just need to start. I just need to facilitate it in the city limits.
Yeah. You'll find that shit grows everywhere. You can't grow it yourself. I could never grow moss for exhibits and stuff, but I don't know why. If shit grows on like, sides of houses and it just grows everywhere, but I can't grow it in what I think is optimal growing conditions in an exhibit. But It looks good. I like the green. So I was like, oh shit, let's try it. Winging it. That was just winging it. I'm glad it looks cool. I'm glad somebody likes it.
There you go. Yeah.
It looks awesome. There's one of the Okatee photos I snapped. And like the colors on an Okatee really have they're like really bright and have great contrast on the green moss.
Because that's the thing. I mean, a lot of my animals are red and orange just like that because obviously I have corn snakes. So, yeah, something like that bright limeish green would really work. So,
do it up. Go look around.
Trying, man. Got to find a good rock, I guess, and bring it home.
Bring home a rock.
And we do have a last question that we have to ask everyone at this point.
Have to.
We're forced at this point.
We are just
we're pondering or pandering
to James Lewis, who makes us ask this question every time. Ryan, what is your favorite pizza topping?
I mean, cheese.
Okay.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll always eat a slice of cheese pizza. Always. Obviously.
You said like, so I was expecting like something like real crazy, but I like that you're just cheese.
Straight up, I have a 6-year-old here, so I eat a lot of cheese pizza.
And a lot of chicken nuggets.
Yeah, surprisingly not as many chicken nuggets, but tons of pizza. Because pizza's not just pizza. Papa John's is different. Pizza Hut is different.
Yes.
All those are different. Snappy tomato that we have around here.
I don't know what that is, but I'm sure it's different.
Yeah, it's local.
Cool.
What's your favorite pizza topping?
Pepperoni.
That's why, if you say anything more intense than pepperoni, that's where you lose us.
That's technically not my favorite. My favorite would technically be ricotta cheese. I like ricotta cheese on my pizza.
That's good.
So like the cheese on the cheese.
Yeah, but we're super basic over here.
Yeah, just as long as you don't say pineapple, basically.
We're okay with it.
What? You guys don't like pineapple on pizza?
Absolutely not.
I like almost anything on a pizza. I'll eat.
It's a little unnecessary. That's all.
Okay. Okay.
You ever had a grilled piece of pineapple?
I don't like grilled fruit. That the whole concept is just weird to me.
Oh well, to each their own.
But yeah. If someone wanted to get in touch with you or ask you anything, where should they reach out to you?
You can message me. I keep looking at you guys' faces on my screen instead of like the camera. You know, so like, yeah. Freaking out. I probably look like I'm looking down the entire time, but
we don't look at the camera because the camera's like we'd be like, way up here. Like we never look at the camera.
Oh yeah, I feel like you're looking at me in the eyes now. So you guys, anybody can message me on Facebook. As long as you're not if anyone friend requests me, I'll probably accept it, and after some mild reconnaissance, make sure you're not
a female bot.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of those lately, but
he gets them all the time, and they poke him and do all the weird.
I started getting the pokes. I was like, wasn't that from like 2012?
Thank you.
Yeah, can you still poke? Why can you still poke? Let's take away the fucking poke right now.
The bot did that. They're like, poke. That'll make them like respond.
That will make them look at my webcam.
Yeah. But a message on Facebook. On both the business page or personal. Personal's better because I don't know if you guys deal with messaging on the business page of Facebook.
Freaking annoying.
I never get updates. Like I never get fresh notifications. So
it's easier for me. I get more updates than he does.
I don't on Android for some reason.
He started the page and he's like the owner or whatever. I'm just like whatever the next step down is. And I get any notification when someone likes or messages us. I get all of them. He doesn't get any.
And it'll be like, keep up your excellent respond time. And I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah.
So you have to throw a lot of thumbs up.
Yeah. I need to respond to everything, no matter how silly, with a thumbs up.
So yeah, there, rad.reptiles82@gmail.com is my email. Rad and then a hyphen reptiles.com is my website. I know those are archaic, but I like having one.
We have one
too.
It's fun. So yeah, feel free I'm not a bashful guy, so you can message me at any point in time, and I just may not respond if I'm asleep, but
but to maintain your excellent response time.
Yeah, so definitely message me personally. That's probably easier. Then I don't have to maintain that impressive response time.
Yeah, that's exactly what we say too.
It's easier.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Ryan, so much for being on. I'm so glad we got to learn about zoo stuff. We don't get to hear that.
That is true. A lot of the people who we have had on that worked at zoos aren't allowed to talk much about the zoo.
Well, I mean, I don't think I went into anything too specific.
I mean, what is there incriminating, or I don't know.
Maybe there is that we don't know. I don't feel like you incriminated anything.
Dude, I hope not. Damn it.
But usually people are like, no, like
people are real weird about it. I don't know why.
I think I spoke really well about it. I mean, zoological institutions are important, and I'm obviously all for it. So I've got nothing but positive things to say.
Yeah, if anything, you put off a positive image of zoological facilities and stuff like that. So I don't.
We'll see. We'll see if I have a meeting request from my boss tomorrow.
Ryan, down to HR. Ryan, HR.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming on. And if you want to reach out to us, obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you've already found us on YouTube at Port City Pythons, but we are always available on Instagram at Port City Pythons and Facebook at Port City Pythons. And our website is portcitypythons.com.
Message us on Instagram or email me. And I forgot that there is one guy that emails me. So thank you.
Our email is theportcitypythons@gmail.com. Yes, Mike.
Because last time I said that no one emails me.
And then Mike
emails me. So.
And multiple people are asking who's coming on next week, and we will not tell that because then we have bad luck.
But I trust the person.
But we are doing it next week, even though it's Labor Day. We are doing a Labor Day show.
It's going to be Sarah Moore.
Wow. Okay.
But I trust her to actually show up, so that's what I'll say.
Okay.
Sarah Moore of Sarah's Snake Shop. She came out with a new corn snake book about all the origins of the snake mutations in the hobby. So it's a good history on all your different corn snake mutations and stuff like that. So It's going to be awesome. We're going to talk some weird corn snake shit that people are probably going to get mad at us.
Why I basically am not here because all their conversations go over my head. So have fun with that.
And she's much better at this stuff than me, so I think you guys will enjoy it, especially all the people who ask me for more IDs and stuff like that. She's pretty much the one who should talk about it way before I do. So tune in next week, regular time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Boom.
6 p.m. Central. Bye. Thank
Later,
you,
guys.
Ryan.
Thank you guys so much for your. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, guys.